Hi, this is Lou Coglianese. I'm a volunteer engagement leader with RSVP. Welcome to the podcast. We're coming to you today from Junior Achievements Finance Park in Fairfax City.
Welcome to the RSVP Northern Virginia podcast, where each week we'll take a look at some of the outstanding volunteer opportunities available to seniors in our area. I'm your host, Rob Payne, an outreach assistant with RSVP.
Hi, this is Rob Payne with RSVP Northern Virginia, and welcome to our newest podcast. Today we are again from the Finance Park, JA's Finance Park in Fairfax City, where our special guest today and 4 other volunteers just completed a special service project for Martin Luther King Day activities coming in a few days before this podcast airs. But we're pleased today to have with us Lou Coglianese. Lou is a RSVP volunteer, and he's also a RSVP engagement leader. Lou, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Lou, let's start at the top here and just tell us a little bit how you got involved with RSVP as a volunteer.
Well, I can't actually remember now that it's 4 or 5 years ago. I don't recall what led me here, except I noticed, it was meetups that I was looking for. I was newly retired, about a year into retirement, and I was looking for places where I'd want to volunteer. So I went into, I'm looking here, I'm looking there. I went to meetups, and I saw the notice about the orientation sessions. So I said, okay, there was going to be one near me, near enough to me. There was going to be one down here in Fairfax Library. And I said, sounds interesting. And I just came down and listened, and I said, I kind of like this program. So I started doing a few things and kept on doing them.
What type of things were you volunteering with to begin with when you were with RSVP? Do you remember any of the activities?
It was a pretty broad brush, from helping out at, I did a few of the Building Together Alexandrias. I did. I was supposed to help traffic control, but it was snowing, so I did indoor work for a meeting of the regional emergency preparedness group. I spread mulch at Wolf Trap. I just kind of picked a variety of things to try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, to see what interested me.
Now, it's interesting you bring up Wolf Trap. One of our previous podcasts, we spoke with Amanda Garrison, who is the volunteer coordinator at Wolf Trap. And you have an interesting story. You also usher out there. You've done it for, I think, several summers. And could you tell us the story of how you got involved, how you found out about the ushering program? I think it has something to do with the gardening project you were just talking about.
It's all about the mulch. We were out there working on preparing the picnic areas for the coming season. And one of the rangers who was coordinating the activities, while we were having lunch, talked about the usher program and that they always needed ushers. And I thought, I had heard of this, but I figured they'd probably have so many. There was no real need for me to do anything about it. He said, no, there's always a need. Yep. There's several hundred people who usher. 700? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't know how many. I knew there was a lot. I didn't want to say a number because I would have underestimated by half.
Yep.
And we have to be able to staff 7 days a week.
Right.
And so not just ushering, but helping with ticket taking and a whole bunch of other things.
Right.
They said, we always need people. So I signed up. and worked out very well.
And you've been doing it for what, is this your fourth season?
Fourth season coming up, maybe.
Fourth season coming up.
Maybe fifth, I'm not quite sure. I've lost track.
Right, that's right. No, and you were saying, and Amanda was saying this too, that the way that they choose folks out there, because they're about to start looking for new volunteers, they have roughly, I think, a 10 to 15% turnover every year. So they're always looking for new people, and they assign you a night. And then at, what is it, like 24, 25 performances might be, depending on what day of the week.
Right.
And then you get to choose. Well, not in the beginning. The beginning, you take the busy nights.
So actually, yeah. So you're assigned, typically as a first-time person, you'd be assigned a Friday or Saturday, because that's where the greatest need is, and that's where the most performances are. But depending on the night, you might have. I'm a Tuesday. So Tuesdays probably have about a dozen performances for the year. But because I don't have as many performances, that gives me more latitude that I could go pick up what we call sub-slips. So you're asked to try to make all the performances. But they understand that you have a few nights that you might not be able to. But if you can't make a performance, you put in a request for a substitute, which are called sub-slips.
Right.
And you say, on this night for this performance, I need up, and here's my contact information. And then somebody looks at the board where every performance, the sub-slips are set up, and they say, oh, I want to hear Yo-Yo Ma or Josh Groban or whomever. And so they pick up the slip, call you up and say, I'm taking your spot.
That's great.
And then that counts as if you were there.
That's great.
So you don't have to worry about, I've missed too many. Now if somebody picks it up, you're covered.
And you've seen, and then once the way it works is, you usually do the ushering. There's several different things you can do out there, but you do the ushering, and usually, unless it's a really rowdy night, you're able to pretty much enjoy the concert once things get moving and once everyone's been seated.
Yeah, you need to be there a little bit beforehand.
Right.
Because we have a little meeting beforehand to understand what tonight's performance is going to be, where the intermissions are, some technical stuff like that. Also, what the performer has asked about, whether they can take pictures,
right.
Stuff like that.
Right.
But once everyone is seated,
right.
It's pretty much the occasional person popping up wanting to know where the restroom is, or where the refreshment stand is. So you pretty much can enjoy the show. And then, unless things are very strange, generally 10 minutes after the last intermission, you're free to go home. So you don't have to stay to the very end if you don't want to. You're free to go home or sit back and enjoy the performance.
That's great.
Yeah, it works out very well, and especially if there's things that pique your interest and you want to substitute in. I usually pick up about 3 to 5 every year that just sound like, this might be interesting, and I've found things that were absolutely fascinating that I would never heard of before, but they kind of sounded interesting, and I tried them.
That's fantastic, and I also understand, and talking to Amanda, if I understand this correctly, that if you're a volunteer with Wolf Trap, I think you get access to some rehearsals for the symphony,
the NSO.
Yeah, the NSO,
National
which is
Symphony.
something not everybody gets to do. So,
right. Yes. They have their rehearsal days.
Right.
I think there's 2. But I know there's at least 1.
Right.
And on those days, you and up to 5 guests.
Boy, up to 5 guests. That's great.
Can come in and enjoy the rehearsal and enjoy Wolf Trap.
That's great. Now, the other thing, again, to say we're here at Finance Park with J.A. This is your first time here, and
yes.
we just took a tour. It's my second time. Pretty impressive place, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a lot of fun, and it looks like they've kind of covered a very large swath
Yep.
of what daily life is like financially for people.
It is, and for people and entrepreneurs and folks, just generally to have a better hold on how to manage their money. And just a quick plug for JA, since we're here, that they are always looking for volunteers. I believe it's usually 9:30 to 1 o'clock. It's a several-hour commitment, but you can only come in. I mean, you can come in one day or 5, whatever your schedule permits. But it's a great experience. When we were walking around, I don't know if you noticed this, Lou, but we bumped into another engagement leader, Ken Kozloff,
Yep, I saw
who
him.
is a very ardent supporter of JA. So we wanted to mention that again. And Patty, who is the volunteer ambassador for Finance Park, is the folk to contact. And of course, you can also call Carly. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk with you about was engagement leaders. Just a segue from Ken, and tell me how you got into being an engagement leader with RSVP.
A few years ago, this concept of engagement leader came up, and I was one of the first. And I don't know if it was just my wonderful personality. No, not really.
No, you're a leader, because I know you from other things, so you're a leader.
But tried to put together a group of people who would help take responsibility for getting things done. And what that responsibility is morphs and varies over time.
Sure.
So some people like the organization side. Some people like the strategic planning and the and organizing from that perspective.
Right.
I enjoy doing the activities, and so I would be more than happy to organize and take the load off Carly, for example, so she doesn't have to come to every one of these
Right.
things.
Right.
So she can go off and do more work to get more volunteers and get more volunteer opportunities.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things I like to do, and I tend to do those. I also do some of the recruiting activities, so that the volunteers at RSVP don't have to be at all of these different events where we do recruiting for new people. So now I go out to various venues pretty often and talk to people about RSVP.
And I think one of the things you were at last year or the year before was the 50 Plus Expo. Were you
Yes.
the one which is coming up again? I believe it's this year, April 30th. The 20th or 30th at the Fair Oaks Marriott. And the other benefit I wanted you to touch on with engagement leaders is that when we have one of these multi-volunteer events, and today to a certain degree, although we're talking even more than 5 people, 15, 20 people,
Sure.
you're there to help folks out, and you sort of, so if somebody goes in and they've never worked at a table, or they don't know how to time a swim meet or something like that.
Right. Yeah, so for example, we did a little fundraiser at Barnes & Noble. We did gift wrapping for
Right.
Christmas. And I had done that before, and anybody who hadn't been there and done that kind of activity before, help them understand what we're trying to do and how the process would work, and also how to enjoy themselves.
That's great.
Because part of doing this, at least for me, is you get to meet a lot of different people,
Yeah.
and just people who are coming in for gift wrapping who
Yeah.
are very harried, and they're trying to get their Christmas stuff done. You do something, you make it a little easier for them, you give them a smile. It makes a big deal.
No, it is great, and I happened to be there that day taking pictures of you. Actually, I think we had 3 engagement leaders there that particular day: Shelley, Brosnan, yourself, and Ken. And but you were the expert with the wrapping, and you did a wonderful job. So I think, and I think they learned a lot too, and the folks who were shopping there definitely appreciated it. So. Why someone's out there listening to this podcast and they're thinking about volunteering, they're over the age of 55, of course, for the sake of argument here, but either way, and they're thinking about volunteering. What do you say to people when you go out and recruit and you talk to folks in the public who aren't RSVP yet, aren't in RSVP?
Okay, so I like to think of it as a means of finding things that interest you, and helping you figure out who it is that could use your services. A lot of folks who are retired, are wondering, what am I going to do with myself?
Right.
Or, gee, I have, some skills and they're not being used. And RSVP is a good place to see where you can match those skills up to things that are going on, or match interests to things that are going on and people who need your help. So I do amateur carpentry. I'm more than happy to go screw doors into cabinets, for a day, because it's enjoyable work for me.
Sure.
And it works out well. So that's what I think is the best thing. Besides that, you meet people that have similar interests. And in fact, one of the strange side benefits for me was that at one event at a recruiting event at the Angelica, where there was kind of a thank you plus recruiting event a few years ago. Right. I started talking to this guy about RSVP, and he mentioned, talking about different interests, he mentioned he was an usher at Wolf Trap. It turned out we worked the same night.
That's funny.
We talked that we both played golf, and he said, well, he has his buddy runs a list of golfers that they play golf all over the county, so I played golf with him for a few years. You never know what's going to come from it.
That's great. No, you don't know, and that's right. And then I guess the other thing is just out of volunteering in general, and you touched on this a little bit, but what do you personally get out of volunteering?
Well, it sounds trite, but I like to help.
Sure, but that's not trite at all. No.
That's the primary thing. I like to do things where I can help the community. Some of the things are, I feel like I've gotten a lot from Northern Virginia. I moved here about 21 years ago. And so some of the things I do, I feel like it's just good to help keep Northern Virginia a great place to live. Other times it's, people who could use some help, and I'm more than willing to do what I can. So that's what I get out of it. I just enjoy it.
That's excellent. And one other thing I wanted to add, Lou is definitely goes beyond and above. You used to live in, was it Vienna?
No, I used to live
Centerville?
Down at the corner of Centerville and Fairfax and Clifton.
In Clifton area, okay.
Left side
all the way over there, okay. And now Lou lives out in Haymarket, and he still continues to come in, even as far as Fairfax City today, where we are. We were on the border of Fairfax City. I'm never quite sure. At Financial Park at Junior Achievement. So we really appreciate all of your work and all your effort and time. And we also appreciate your outreach, and especially doing things like spending the time today talking with some of the folks who really appreciate that. And one last thing I wanted to ask you, you talked about selection and time and choices. You don't have to, now with Wolf Trap, you do have sort of a medium commitment with them. I mean, well, actually more medium, but a lot of the other things that you do, I think the word you use is one-hit deals, which is a common, one-timers, which is a common phrase in our lexicon. So you can just go in and pick something and do it for a few hours. You don't have to make long-term commitments.
That's right.
Correct?
And that's mostly what I do. Is I'll try to pick up, every time the newsletter comes out, I'll try to pick up one or two things that would interest me and go take care of it. And also the occasional time when we're short of people, I'm happy to jump in and do that. But it works out best for me because I have a very irregular other schedule. And being able to pick the times and work around things is what's best for me.
Definitely. Well, that's excellent. Well, thank you again. And I also want to thank Patty and Holly from JA for allowing us the space here. They're tiptoeing around not to disturb the microphone, and we appreciate that. They've had a long day too. So, and again, just just one more plug here for JA. If really looking for some more volunteers out here, so please visit our website, and our latest newsletter has a lot of the different opportunities at JA, so please and call Carly, number 703-403-5360. So Lou, thanks again. I really appreciate your time today, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you, and thanks for joining us on the podcast, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Be sure to join us every Wednesday for a new edition of the RSVP Northern Virginia podcast. For more information on RSVP Northern Virginia, to learn about some of our upcoming volunteer opportunities, please visit our website at www.rsvpnova.org. On behalf of Nadia Hoonan and Carly Hubicki, thank you again for joining us. And remember, RSVP Northern Virginia, matching great volunteers with great opportunities.